Good afternoon, collective. It's Al, and I'm actually coming to you today as part of, I would say, an addendum to a piece that I'm about to release on my LinkedIn profile, which actually speaks to a little bit more in-depth conversation on the subject of conscious leadership. And though I didn't know I was actually going to be doing a video, as I was about to hit submit and actually post it, I realized that sometimes one of the best things you can do, especially in the realm of online life, is to accompany a piece that is meant out of purity with tonality. A statement that actually speaks to the intention behind the piece and where it's actually coming from, as opposed to always allowing other people to maybe project onto what they see as the intention behind it. So what essentially is happening is I decided to actually focus on what I am understanding a common vision or common goal to be for a conscious leader, right? We've discussed a little bit the topic of what that actually means, but what I started the piece with was a reference to Aristotle's statement that once read that law is reason free from passion. And though a lot of people use it more in legalese, I discovered that the ultimate law is the all. And if you are spiritual or if you are non-spiritual, if you're just someone who exists in this reality, you understand that law is the all. And so what I wanted to do was kind of focus the attention onto what happens to us as species, as a species, when we project our emotional range into the subject at hand. Now, I discussed in another piece how passion is incredibly important if it's coming from an organic internal place. It drives us to live our dreams and to be of service and to do great things. But where passion becomes confusing is where it becomes emotional. And so what I was speaking to in the piece is that conscious leaders are leaders who are actually aware of themselves and understand where to draw the line with their emotional reaction to things, and understanding that they must allow space between their point of view and the opposition's point of view and find a way to meet in the middle. And what I had made quite clear in the piece was there is a great many of us who become disempowered when we are drawn into a debate or an argument by someone who literally is being paid millions or billions of dollars to just piss you off. Because what ends up happening is when you create polarity, the corrupt that are trying to cheat the system find a way to stay in power because nothing ever changes. It's almost like a stalemate situation so as to make sure that no one progresses forward, allowing the same people who have been perpetuating all of the evils or whatever you want to call it into the world to keep going. And it's a great strategic ploy used incorrectly by the people that we as conscious leaders are kind of coming up against. And one of the things that I want to make very clear when I write some of these things is that I'm not castigating anybody and I'm not judging other people for their path. What I'm saying though, as a collective, we are now in a mature state where we are becoming aware not just of ourselves, but the intentionality of another human being towards us. And it can range anything from being manipulative or being combative. How many of us have noticed, and I'm just going to be very honest, let me just apologize for what's going on with the lighting because I don't have fancy equipment, so whatever the camera's doing is natural, so I'm just going to let it be. But when it comes to the arena that we're starting to see, if you really look at the players and you remove your emotion from the conversations that they are trying to engage us in, you start to see that they have a consistency of past behavior that does nothing but grab ratings, or they do nothing but throw bombs into our communities so as to get us into a confrontational standoff between each other, creating what can only be called as disharmony, meaning that no one ever goes anywhere. It's just locked. We are locked in like a lockjaw. It's not going to give. And one of the things that conscious leadership is about is the ability to acknowledge the existence of that and to coexist with it. And as regular everyday people, including myself, because I'm not anything special, I'm just a human being who is just aware. When I look to that, what I realize is the more that we retaliate against them, the less the other side is ever willing to meet us in the table. Meaning that the same key players that are already well known in our environment, they've made millions of dollars on this, they stay in power as they do it. Because what they do is by focusing on their specific arena, they ensure that those people don't leave. But the interesting part is in a common democracy, and where we should be as a species, what happens is that there are still people who can reach other people who are on the fringe, and it starts to dissolve strongholds. But what happens when we react emotionally, which is what Aristotle was speaking to, is that we become disempowered from being able to communicate even to the people who are on the fringe, because they purposely want you to not even want to talk to them. That is their whole point. They inflare them to such a degree that we then react to their energy, and we can't even deal with we don't even want to look at the fringe. All of them are crazy to us because that's the image and what they're trying to project into our reality, and it disempowers those of us who are more in a place of stillness from being able to then look and realize that it's just the people in power, the small little group of people in power that are doing this because they're puppeteering both sides. The more that you on the opposing side feed into the anger and the vitriol and you start going back and forth, the more the reality becomes that you disempower your ability to communicate effectively to those people on the fringe, which is what we're seeing throughout all of the narrative. So though I understand that we are in a very critical place in our transition, whether we are going to evolve or de-evolve, one of the things that conscious leaders are most needed for is the ability to rise above it and represent not just an individual ideal or an individual house, but to literally represent all of the houses equally in some way, shape, or form. And that takes a lot of stamina and a lot of skill set. But conscious leaders aren't just there to boast about themselves. They're not there about just their skill set. They're going to help humanity actually engage themselves and rise as well. So what I wanted to do right now is kind of address some of the things that we as everyday people can do. Beginning with, if you see that someone literally is a jackal or a jack-in-the-box, and they literally are just there to piss everyone off, then why engage them at all? Why are you watching what they're going to say? Why are we... I mean, you can say that you're trying to be informed, but the truth is you're not being informed, because the moment you flash and the moment we get angry, we completely lose any power we had over ourselves. We start doing ridiculous things like going online and being the same monster that we are then calling the other person, because we immediately drop to that frequency. So their pull is to see how mad they can get you, so as to ensure that you never show up for yourself in an empowered state and actually create change. That is their desire, and they get paid a lot of money to do it. So as conscious leaders, one of the things that we're discovering as we move forward, and I say myself in this because of the fact that I'm in a position where I'm seeing things from a little bit different standpoint, is the fact that every individual voice counts. But the moment that we flare and we lash out at other people, we immediately lose connections that we once may have needed and that may have been on our path to help us grow and prosper. So it's like a double and like a double thing down towards you, right? You immediately go from not just being here to then being here to then being completely at the floor. You're not even at the table anymore because you're unable to meet the other person in the middle. And that's an interesting dichotomy to be in. Because the people that we as conscious leaders are trying to connect with are other conscious leaders who are aware that within their own houses there are people who are there just to terrorize everyone else. They literally live and breathe on negativity, and their entire life is built upon making sure that you are as unhappy as they are. And that's something very strange to have to work with. And it's something that we as a collective aren't necessarily used to, because for a long time in our world, we were able to debate. We were able to come to the table and we were able to do things. But key people have been put into key places that are just there to ensure that we can't progress, because they're stalemating. That is what a stalemate is. So for those of you who find yourself suddenly being more cognizant of the antics of most of these people, why don't we just start doing a practice where we just stop engaging them at all? We can still see other people within that house, and we can still engage those people within the house and see if we can find common ground and maybe break bread with them. But stop going for the puppets. There are literal puppets in our world that we all know who they are, that literally are there just to antagonize you. Why are you handing away your power? Something that the conscious leaders are going to be coming up against in opposition. Remember, up until now, it's been pretty smooth sailing for the corrupt and for the hypocritical and for the people who don't want change. Because all they have to do is stalemate each other and nothing changes. And so both sides play each other like none of them are bad and none of them are good. And I mean, they play each other like they're all vessels of purity, right? They all claim that they are absolutely right in what they're doing, but what they're actually doing is they're betting on the everyday person, you and me, to not be able to see that they're being manipulative. So when you're in this situation, the thing that Aristotle was pointing out is remove the passion for the moment where you hear information from someone that you know is specifically trying to piss you off, and look at what their agenda is in that moment. And it's going to take a lot of intuition, because as we all know from our personal experiences, some of the best masters manipulators that have ever existed have been ex-partners of ours. And they specifically used to get us to lash out at them so that they could play victim. And what did that do? That infuriated their family and made you the bad guy. But were you the bad guy, or were you just tricked? And so when this article is, when this comes out today, I'm going to attach this particular video so as to understand where the attention is coming from. It's not to label anyone or to create a fight, even though I have no problem with that. But, I mean, I'm not going to engage it. But what I'm saying is, like, I have no problem going toe-to-toe with someone. But what I am interested in is ensuring that I'm not the only one who has the skill set to do so. There are immensely powerful reporters that I am watching be taken down to the bottom level by being angered and triggered into an argument by someone who literally knows what they're doing. And the person, these reporters and these incredibly important VIPs are falling for it, left, right, and center. And what's worse is that what it then does is it takes their foundational structure, everything that they have built, and it brings it to the ground. All by someone who literally is just trying to do that on purpose, playing that they are either the victim or playing that they are being targeted incorrectly, or whatever you want to say, because both sides are doing this. It's not left or right, it's like both. But when you do that, then what ends up happening is that the people in the middle, the people that are actually perpetrating this, are literally just standing back knowing that their constituency already is angry at the person that they've just demolished. And so by demolishing the opposing party in front of everybody and allowing the world to see them flash, it immediately makes their network start to break apart. People start to run from them because they made a mistake. Because remember, I said conscious leaders are going to be in the public arena. It's going to be a battle of the wits. It's going to be a battle of ethics, of integrity. And that's what's interesting. You see, the same people that are being targeted because they are conscious leaders have integrity. So you're going to need to be, if I can be of humble service and kind of point this out, I would be self-aware enough to pay attention to the people who do not flash back. It's super important. And then when you see someone who suddenly becomes targeted by these robotic people who actually have no good intention for humanity, when you see somebody suddenly get like a bunch of bombardment of negativity, then be conscious of the action of what's going on around them and who's actually driving that herd towards them. Because you're going to start to identify who these people are much more clearly. And so then you are able to, every time they show up, not engage them emotionally. Instead, you just look at them, you let them speak, and then what you do is you don't respond emotionally, instead you respond analytically. And you go, okay, I see where you may be coming from, but if you're expecting me to respond to you emotionally, then you have the wrong person. But let's address the situation. What is the conversation that we need to have? And the moment that you do that, the moment that any of us do that in any given situation, immediately the other person now has to show up, and they won't. One of the things I'm finding most interesting about the dynamic that's going on in our world right now with change and transition is that cowards love to make other people be puppeteered. They can never stand up to the person that they are trying to tackle. It's impossible for them to do it. I watch it over and over again. And if they do it in such a blank canvas way where they never actually have to meet that other person, which is a testament to how shady they actually can be. So instead of empowering these bomb makers, our task is to evolve everyone within the species to a level of conscious leadership where everyone can stand in front of another person and re-engage them eye to eye. Because right now, as long as they are able to flash us out and to trigger us and to piss us off, then the right looks just as evil as the left. And I'm going to be very honest with you. Neither side right now looks great. In fact, I would say that both of you are heading towards disaster, right? Because neither one of you has taken the higher road. And the only way to evolve as a species is to find that middle path. So, though I know that these people get paid a lot, secretly, well, not that secretly, if we stop being distracted by the glitter effect, which is what I call it when they throw a bunch of glitter in the air, abortion rights, gay rights, anything that is polarizing, they would throw it consistently when they're trying to hide something, right? And so whenever you see that happen, immediately remove your emotional range from the scenario and step back one step. Look at the players that are on the field and look at it from a strategic standpoint and go, wait a minute, you brought this up. And then look at that person and then look at whatever's going on in their specific arena. Are they caught in some sort of controversy? Were they caught with an underage hooker? Were they caught not paying taxes? Were they caught whatever it is? And you suddenly find yourself becoming a conscious person because you are awakening to the fact that you are now able to immediately go, oh, I know what he's doing. I know exactly what he's doing or she's doing because, hello, equal. All right, men and women are equal. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. There are some women out there who I'm just going to say are some of the most manipulative people in the entire world. But you know what? So are men. So we're not going to get into that whole gender bias thing. But that's another thing. The majority of our world population endorses equality for women. The minority of people do not. So then why are we allowing ourselves to be so angry over corrupted parties being corruptive instead of actually settling our emotions and finding a way to deal with them legally? Because we can't do that where emotion exists. It stops your passion from making it through. It blocks you. It blocks every one of us. Because when we are passionate, then we're driven by truth, and we're driven by integrity, and we're driven by things like that. But when we confuse passion for emotion, we disempower all of that. We immediately go backwards in time, and we become the child that throws a temper tantrum. And we look like that to the external world, which is what I'm speaking to about some of the most important reporters that we've ever had, people who I used to admire greatly. I don't put people on pedestals anymore because, pedestals are meant to make the person fall. So you should never put anybody on a pedestal. But what I'm saying is that people that I used to watch and just be like, wow, they have such integrity, have been taken to the mat and now look no better than the other side. And so both sides are now looking at each other going, we can't we're not going to be able to do this because they're intentionally making it that way to stay in power. It's a game to them. And that is something that should drive your actual passion and compassion for each other up. If you really think about what's happening in the arenas, whether it's business or whether it's political, especially in the political, you are nothing but cattle to them. Extendable people who literally can be bamboozled and led any which way by whoever is being paid the most to act out the most. And when we engage those particular people and watch their shows, or we watch their commentary, or when they pop up on, oh, I'm going to continue to do this, next year I'm doing this, immediately everyone who pays into it pays them the money that they're earning. Every time that I've watched a Democratic or Republican thing go back and forth, because I'm not speaking just to politics, this is spiritual, this is all, every house has this going on. But when I watch the two go back and forth to each other, I'm always fascinated by the fact that people don't just watch the debate. They will invest their time, money, and energy in watching the opposing side to get information and intel on them, meaning that they're literally paying their salaries in the millions. Right? Every viewer that watches those people is paying their salary to exist and to piss you off. So why not just wait till they actually go head to head in a debate where neither side is getting paid more than the other, and then zone in on the truth? These are things that we as conscious leaders need to be aware of. Because what ends up happening, wow, I look like I'm in some sort of ridiculous video. I'm sorry, guys, it's so unprofessional, but this is just me talking. But wow, it's hot out here right now. The moral of back to business. The moral of story is conscious leaders are representing not just one demographic or one marginalized group. They represent a population, and it's not just a nation population. They represent a global concern. There are things happening where we have so much disease and so many things going on that affect every single human being. We have so many things going on with poverty and homelessness everywhere in the world. We have topics that really need to change. We have global warming that is literally, probably, if we don't deal with it soon, is going to, it's just accelerating itself. And there's all these topics that are actually important that we're not looking at because we're allowing small demigods, if you will, to act out and get us all pissed off. So that our entire focus doesn't go on reality or truth, but it goes into, oh my God, how can you say this? You said this about this person? Yeah, they did, because they knew that they would get your ratings. What do we all do? The moment someone says something racist or something completely inappropriate, not just by an accidental comment, but like actually goes out onto the world to do that, we all then do what? We look at their Twitter feed, we look at their accounts, and we follow their information because we want to be angry. But you're paying them. You're not only paying them in literal money because they're making money off of how much attraction they can pull in, but you're also giving them all of the energy you possess. You are exchanging your power and giving it to someone who literally is just working to take you down. They don't respect you. Remember, to a lot of people in this world, they don't understand what compassion is. They don't understand what empathy is. All they understand is business and money. And when you operate from that way, we as the people that are observing this as conscious beings almost begin to feel a little bad for them because they're never going to evolve. And whatever it is that they think they're building will be taken away by a greater source than we. Like, it's already, all of them are aligned to have massive downfalls. And if you know my work, you know I'm right. So, but we're not to celebrate their downfall. We're to celebrate how we build from the chaos that's ensuing. Because otherwise, we are not going to be effective. You know, at some point, when we sit in our corners, then there's nothing but darkness. And it's because people are actually being paid to ignite your emotion. And so Aristotle was very clear on this. The law isn't just reflective of the legal law. The all is the law of all things. It exists everywhere. And so when you ignite your inner passion and it becomes emotional, then you've lost control of yourself and you've gone back to slumber. You have lost your empowerment and your ability to be effective because you're now engaging the lower vibrational nature. And what it does is the angrier you get, the more you go down to their level, which is why I made the comment about some of the reporters. Because there are some businessmen out there who I really admire, who do incredible philanthropic stuff, but they're competing in a market for popularity, which immediately pulls them into a lower vibration. They're no longer just humanitarians. They're also now like selling themselves as a way to make other people billionaires. If that's their intention, great. But there are some of them who are being misled, right? Because a lot of us have gone through a phase where we are now working, especially the newer generations, the new generations that are following us, are engaging more with brands, if you will, that specifically deal with the environment or have major outwardly facing charitable ties. And so what's happening is that they are being also bamboozled, if you think about it, into believing that by making people financially wealthy in the material world and neglecting all of the charitable aspect or the spiritual aspects to their own empires and all of the truth of who they are, that they're going to rise. But what they don't realize is that the days of us investing our time, our energy, our anger, and all of our emotional ranges into people who are just there to piss us off is going. It's going with the world that I mentioned that was gone before COVID. right? It doesn't hold power to us anymore. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm not just the only one who's noticing this. I'm noticing a vast amount of people in our population who are starting to disengage with the enemy. Because through that process, what's going to happen is that they're going to stop seeing each other as enemies because they're not buying into the narrative. How many of you have heard that the world is coming to an end? All right, well, yeah, at some point. I mean, not to bring everybody down, but when we're born, we're kind of already on the path of death. So I'm not going to get into that whole spiritual, analytical, philosophical debate. But have you ever noticed that then there are people who actually are talking about uplifting society, and how they are working towards the expansion of consciousness and bringing people towards each other? Notice that there's an obvious polarity between directional poles, right? And have you noticed that according to the narrative that we're speaking about, and according to the corrupt and hypocritical that are trying to piss you off, that we're all going to hell in a handbag anyway? Where are we putting our intention? Where is our attention going as well? Why are we watching people get paid to hurt us and to not let us heal when there are much better avenues that are trying to help heal the planet? These are important questions that conscious leaders are going to be tackling. So when you read the article, what I'm basically just saying is that the article is coming from a place of peace. It's not coming from a combative place. It's coming from a space that these conscious leaders need to be brought together. And they're going to be incredibly important in helping humanity lift itself out of the shadows. Because everything is engaging the shadow. Whether someone is an adulterer or whether someone is... I mean, we're trying to find all the dirty on every single person. But heaven forbid the light ever gets shined back at us. Whereas conscious leaders do not care. They care about the dirty stuff, but they've cleaned it. So anything that comes up in their life, they're just going to, like for me, I already have an entire dossier ready for if something from my past comes up, I already have what I'm going to say. I've already thought about it. Why? Because I've been looking at the world from a place of being brave. And one of the things that bravery requires, especially in conscious leaders, is to be very forthcoming with your life. And to be very clear with where you've come from and what you've done and how you got here. Because where you think that is your greatest mistake, it's your greatest blessing when you meet someone who also has done that mistake and needs help and needs guidance and needs a leader. That's a leader, right? That's a real leader. That's a champion of humanity. Someone who owns their mistakes and is ready to deal with them because it's not a pain to them anymore. It's not embarrassing. It's not something that they're ashamed of, because shame is the ultimate poison for any human soul. If you are ashamed of something, or someone puts shame upon you, immediately disconnect from whoever that is and find your inner way to make that pain into light, to make that pain into something that brings pleasure to millions or whatever people. I mean, it could be 100 people, it could be 5 people. If you have gone through something traumatic or made such a horrible mistake that the world has lashed out at you, or you've suffered some sort of trauma because of something that you've done, then you can help other people avoid making that mistake. Or you can be of greater service, but you can only do that as a conscious leader if you're willing to have the light shown on every aspect of your life. And stand there and be like, yep, that was a lot of fun, not my best choice. I'm just gonna say. There's a couple things that I just look at and I'm just like, wow, what the hell was I thinking? And then I look at it and I go, well, I couldn't have become the man that I am today if I wouldn't have done that stupid shit. I'm sorry, that's an expletive, but I curse. And that's another thing. There's so much hypocrisy and so much going on that conscious leaders are a lot more aware of themselves and are probably going to be a lot more forthcoming. And sometimes it will come across a little bit too informal. But where we're going, we need to break down barriers. And right now, with so much formality and so much greed and hypocrisy, and so many people getting paid to hurt us by making us feel so bad about ourselves and about the world. I mean, think about it from a strategic standpoint, for those of you who are conscious beings. How would you hold on to absolute power when you are the worst of the worst, if not by making everybody buy into the narrative that the world's already and that it can't be fixed? Talk about easy breezy, beautiful, whatever, I don't want to pay for liability, but you know what I mean. Like, how easy is it to take your poison that you live and breathe in, because that's what makes you money? Like, have you ever met people who make a living off of finding other people's dirt? Right? Like, I'm not talking about investigators, because there's a reason why investigators exist. They're part of the legal system, and there's a whole nine yards. But I'm talking about people who make millions of dollars by outing people, or millions of dollars by going and exposing people who had affairs, who then themselves are having affairs. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, they just love to create dirt because they are dirty. And so their entire life is about spewing dirt and hatred and vitriol into the world because that's all they've ever known. Well, the people who are opposing that are going to have to then humble themselves and see the pain from where they're speaking from and find a way to address that, and then also know when to just go, okay, this person is just, that's not going to change. But we're not going to invest our money, our time, our energy, any of our focus on that situation anymore, because then we're just propelling them to get paid. So then we're creating our own worst nightmare. A nightmare that doesn't exist unless you agree that it exists, right? If you are on the right and you're looking at the left, right, you do realize that you're on either side of the same situation, right? Like, you are seeing that, like, in a box, that left and right are still part of the same box. So the more disengaged you are from each other and the less you're able to see the other side of something, the more power the corrupt few that are manipulating you have to keep you small. How do you think they're getting away with everything they're getting away with? All they have to do is throw up like 4 key hot topic issues, and the entire world goes, oh my God. It's not some form of, like, just absent-minded belief system. It's what's actually happened. And the worst part is there comes a moment where we as conscious human beings become self-aware of the fact that we have been manipulated into hating each other. There's nothing more infuriating, and I'm just going to let y'all know that that is one of the worst parts of evolution, is the moment that you realize that people who you thought meant you well and were saying that they were on your side were doing nothing but using you to hurt everyone else. There's nothing more traumatic in the life of a human being than that moment. That's a tower. That's when everything in your life comes crumbling down. Because just think of all the people that they have manipulated into having fights with, and that you lost those dear friends or that family. Think about it. Like, think back to all of the times that someone has manipulated you into taking a side and not allowed you to come up with your own response, but instead told you what to think, and because you're part of that family, you went with it, and then suddenly one day you realize that they were just using you. They didn't care. They don't have your best, they have their own best interest. And that's where conscious leadership is super different, is because conscious leadership isn't about just our interest, it's about everyone's interest. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is when you read the article, understand its place among what we're trying to do as a world, which is we're just trying to come to a safe space where, though we disagree, we can at least talk again. Because there are people who literally are here just to hurt everyone equally. They don't care what side that they're on. They will pander to whatever pays the most money. And what they do is they use you and me and everyone else as fodder. They use it as a way to really hurt people on a deep level because it's a personal matter to you and to who you interact with. And it's one of those things that we as a collective, especially as conscious leaders, are going to have to be aware of. When the fire spreads and people realize how manipulative it has been and what the 2 years have been about, when that light bulb goes off, we need to be in position, and we need to be in a place where no matter how small you think you are, no matter if you're just someone's friend and they've suddenly come to realize how much people have hurt them in order to hurt other people just to stay in power, you need to just be there as a friend. And you need to get there first so that you can be of service. And you need to figure out what that means about what your own belief system is. Because a lot of us genuinely are not as hateful as we're coming across. And a lot of super intellectual people used to not be dragged into emotion. They used to be analytical. But now they allow popularity or the need for ratings or whatever the double snare is that everybody's all into right now. They're allowing that to propel them to do or say things or act in ways that get them higher ratings from a particular demographic that is literally going to be destroyed by the same people who are perpetuating the crime. Right? Why on earth do we still have child predators everywhere? Why are they not in jail? Why is there so much child trafficking? Really, like, think about that. You would kill somebody, I know I would, if they ever touched my child, but it's okay for them to touch other children? You see what I'm saying? So there's all this superfluous that they're throwing in front of you because they know it instigates a fight. So as to ensure that we, on left, right, center, middle, everybody, can't see the truth of what they're trying to avoid. A great many people that are perpetrating this type of behavior and getting paid a lot of backdoor money to do this have a lot more darkness than what we perceive. I just want you guys to be aware of that. Because if you really think about it, we live in a democratic nation. And one of the great things about our democracy is that it's built of multiple sides. But none of those sides right now, since 2000, have been able to come to the middle. And look at how much money they have made off of that. Look at how angry you are that I am. I used to get really pissed off. I remember, I'm not going to go into who it was, but someone won an election and everybody that I was around started crying. And it was just the end of the world. And I remember being completely still and going, well, I'm not going to accept this. And it was the door that led me out. It led me out of the maze to a degree where I started to then step back far enough as a personal person to let my soul speak through me and say, wait a minute. This is a show. Everything in this world right now is built around ratings. It's built about money. It's built around a belief that you have power if you somehow hold a lot of numbers. That's not how this works. Have you ever noticed that a lot of people, when they reach a certain level of stature or status, they become so internalized that there's a bubble that is created around their reality. Yes, they've managed to make a world for themselves and that they've created their own dream, but the problem is that it's a dream. It doesn't actually exist within the context of the world. And so at some point, somehow, whether by their own hands or someone else's, that bubble gets popped, and they come crumbling to the ground. We're rewarding that in many ways. And so what I spoke to in the piece was the conscious leaders aren't better than anyone else. They're just aware of the game. And what they're going to do when we finally bring this all home is they're going to neutralize the inflammatory nature to what's going on. Because whether you are left or right, we still need politics. We still need representatives on a legal front and in that world. We still need houses of worship. We still need school systems. We still need everything that's already there. We just need to repurpose it and strengthen it with core values that represent everyone equally. That doesn't pander to one or the other. There are so many problems that we are looking at as a species that literally can be solved by just electives. If you want to have, and I mean electives in school systems, some of the biggest arguments that people have is that we are making other people buy into our opinions, not allowing them to have their own. So if someone's exceedingly Catholic, and that's their full right, and someone's is of Jewish descent, then why don't we just hand the children the elective to go with and study their faith in school? And if someone doesn't have faith, then they get another elective. It is up to the child to discover who they are anyway. So see what I'm saying? That's an inflammatory thing that triggers people. But why are we letting that be a trigger? You see what I'm saying? Because then nobody gets their way anyway. And so it just perpetuates anger and all sorts of horrible vibrational energy that goes into the world that is basically asking us, like, y'all can't even figure out how to stop killing me? I'm the mother. Like, you can't exist without my womb. but we're allowing specialized interests to perpetrate anger bombs so as to entice everyone around that bomb to become attracted to that flame instead of the divine flame that is trying to materialize through the conscious leadership that is aware of all of these fallacies. So if you're watching this or if you read the article, then find the tonality to be a pure state, which is, I'm just making you aware from my own little humble place that we need this change, this conscious leadership to rise. And we need to involve ourselves in the process to how they got there. Because it's going to help us get there. And it's going to help us see the world from a more global perspective. And we will be able to end hunger. We will be able to do more with renewable energy. We will be able to do all of that by acknowledging and removing the people from our attention and from our day-to-day focus that are there just to piss us off. I want you all to think about, and so I'm going to leave on this, but I want everyone that sees this to think back on a situation where you were a third party in a situation, but you didn't have both sides of the coin. And what ended up happening, let's say, is that you went out with a friend and somehow that friend was accused of doing something that wasn't true, but your alliance was to someone who said that they saw it. And somehow you were dragged into that fight, even though you had no way of knowing, but you took a side. And then you found out that you took the wrong side. And what ended up happening to both of those people that put you in the middle? They both left your life anyway. They fucked you over anyway. Sorry. They did. Or how about a situation where you had a little bit too much to drink and you disconnected from your higher self and you lashed out and got in a fist fight and ended up in jail? Right? That's like a manipulative thing, right? Because we're disconnecting from our higher. So our higher self is trying to tell us something right now as a species, which is you have a beautiful planet that you are a part of, and you're all one within it. And the game that's being played is to keep you separated so that you can't actually evolve into who you're meant to be. Or how about when you think back to when you have been so angry at your wife or your husband that you've said something that you can never take back? Well, that's the energy that they're preying on you with. They're making you so hateful that you say things that they then can use to either destroy you directly through their particular demographic, or they're doing it so that you end up alone because you alienate yourself with your extremism from even your friends and your family. That's the game they're playing. So if you are interested in being a change leader, then you're going to have to remove the emotion from the game. Because though our world is not a game to us, it's a game to the people who use us like sheep. And that's a truth that we need to be there for each other and now deal with. It doesn't matter what side of the coin you're on. It matters the fact that they're using you to hurt each other. And they're using you to spread so much hatred throughout the world that you're actually believing that we can't fix things. That you're actually believing that everyone within that house is the devil. No, that's not how that works. The structure wouldn't stand if that was true. So when you read the article in closing, I want you to find the mental piece to look at it from what is represented as far as just idea. It's a suggestion that may be beneficial to some of us on planet Earth to take into consideration, so as to allow ourselves not to be victimized by people who are trying to hurt us. In the end, when it's all said and done, they do not care if they hurt you and your family and your loved ones. They only care that they got the money, or they got the endorsement, or they got their way, or whatever it is. And the people that we need to stand in opposition of them are conscious leaders who don't have the dirt for them to manipulate, or who don't have whatever it is that they're using, and has enough of a support system behind them to look back at the trajectory of their experience and everything they've put out into the world and support them in knowing that when they get attacked, that it is literally an agenda pushing to destroy someone else. Which, by the way, isn't even fair play. Because to me, a true leader meets the other leader face to face and they have a conversation. And they don't need their constituents to back them up. A leader stands for everybody. And everybody that's with that person knows that that person is going to go toe to toe. And is going to do it with integrity, humility, honesty, compassion. I mean, they're going to show up. And they're not going to need everybody there. But they're going to have everybody there. And that's where we're heading. So I just wanted you guys to understand the tone from where I was speaking from. Because I don't think at all the world is as bad as they're making it to be. But as long as we let them continue to keep us apart and so against each other, then they stay in power and they win. And I don't think they should win. I think we, the population of Earth, should win. That's it for everybody. I'm going to go and do something else. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for listening.